Programmers are on a different time schedule from the rest of us. They tend to sleep during the day, and they're up during the night. But I called Kaido, and when the phone connected, it was a really memorable experience because the voice was so clear that I felt like Kaido was standing next to me, and I was in my underwear. I felt naked. And this was a little bit of uncomfortable. It almost reminded me of the first time I used voice over IP in Pittsburgh. In fact, the sound quality was so clear that when we tested it on users, they were a little bit disturbed by the fact that they couldn't tell if they were talking to another person or to nothing during the pauses in conversation. We're so used to the telephone that has a little bit of noise in the back. You know if someone hung up on you on a telephone because you hear nothing. And we actually had to add some artificial noise into Skype so that you knew someone was on the other line and that they hadn't hung up the phone. So from this moment, this night with Kaido, we literally decided to launch Skype the next day. And we did this kind of silently. We didn't do much marketing fanfare, and we really wanted to see if we had a hit on our hands and if the software would kind of grow from people telling other people about it. So I asked everybody on our team to give me the email addresses of 10 friends that they thought might be interested in trying Skype. We sent out an email, and we asked them to install and test Skype. And this was a great deal of fun because we'd never seen more than 5 people at once on Skype at any given time. And we were now kind of testing to see whether it could handle more. So on a Monday, we saw maybe 6 people online. And on a Tuesday, we saw 10 people online. And by the end of the week, we knew that people were spreading the word because there were more people on Skype than we had sent the initial email to. And I remember one giant leap came when we all of a sudden got lots and lots of Polish users on Skype. The numbers jumped from maybe 50 online at once to 200 or 300 overnight. And it turns out someone had posted a notice about Skype on a Polish news site. And it turns out Poland is a fantastic market to distribute Skype for a couple of reasons. They have government subsidies for broadband. So a lot of people in Poland had broadband in their homes at the time. At the same time, they had a telecom monopoly, which means that it was very expensive to call internationally, both out of Poland and into Poland. And we also know that Poles are never afraid to leave Poland to find work. We know lots of Poles who want to stay in touch with their families back in their home country. So it's not shocking in retrospect to see why Poland was actually, for the first half year or so, the #1 market for Skype. Well, I never worked so hard in my life as this period. We wanted to fuel this growth, and we were kind of afraid that if we didn't continue developing Skype, we might squander a huge opportunity. So I remember I actually was traveling nonstop between our new office in London and Estonia, where we had our programmers. More or less flying. When Annika told us prior to this about her life on the tour, I really felt a lot of kinship with her. That's the only place in which I feel kinship with her, by the way. I can't play golf at all. In fact, I never was home in Sweden long enough to get the heating fixed in my apartment. It was ice cold. But every night I fell asleep with a laptop on my chest. I actually worked until I fell asleep, and then when I woke up, I just continued working. So I never really got cold because of the warmth of the laptop on my chest. And this was a huge shock to my girlfriend and now wife at the time. My girlfriend at the time and now wife. When she saw that I was used to sleeping with a laptop on my chest, so she promptly banned me from having any computers in the bedroom, which is still in force today. I wanted to just close by telling you a little bit of the philosophy that we developed in releasing Skype. And I'm not talking about the initial release, but I'm talking about developing software over time, the changes that we made to the program when we released it. We really kept in mind 3 user groups every time we released a new version of Skype to the public. The first was the press. There's nothing greater than getting free advertising when newspapers all across the globe write about your product. So we actually had PR consultants that we brought into the design room. We brought them in with the programmers. And this was really interesting to see the PR people try to communicate with programmers, because they don't usually speak the same language. But we wanted to make sure that every version of Skype had something that you could imagine writing an article about. Something that they could twist into a headline that would be interesting for people to read about. The second group that we took into account was, of course, the users themselves. And I spent hours studying people when they used Skype. I spent hours studying my parents when they used Skype. And we even videotaped people when they used Skype. And what we wanted to achieve was this concept of delighting the user. We were happy if people could download the software and make a phone call, but we were really happy if they did it with a big smile on their face the whole time. And whenever we saw some signs of frustration on the face of our users, we knew there was something we had to do. And sometimes it was just a matter of changing the color or about telling people what's happening in the software. And the last group that we were very sure to please were the geeks. And I've spoke to some people during lunch, and they said, my brother helped me install Skype on my computer. And I think every household and every office has a resident geek that's ultimately the person that's going to recommend this type of software. And that's ultimately going to be the one who installs it and teaches you how to use it. And I laughed a little bit when I looked around the room, because I've actually been the resident geek for 4 people in this room. Barbro Enbom, who's Karin's sister, used to live near me on the Upper East Side. And she called me sometimes and invited me over for a homemade dinner. And I love to get a home-cooked meal, of course. So I went over to her place, and she would, give me this great meal, and then she would ask me to install her printer. The other person, Magnus Gink, who was on the previous panel, I worked with Magnus in New York, and I was the office geek who helped install and was very influential in installing the programs that we used at the office. And Olle Westberg, who's my neighbor, I know that Olle is the geek in his household. I've been reading his newsletter for 10 years. But when Olle was traveling, his wife gave me a phone call, and she had lost her email icon on her Mac, and she asked me to come up and fix it for her, which I was very happy to do. So those are the 3 groups that we were very keen on, making sure that we checked those 3 boxes every time we made a new Skype release. I'm going to wrap up. We ended up selling Skype. I'm sure you know about the growth of Skype over time, and we ended up selling Skype to an American company, eBay, in 2005. But I wanted to give you a couple of numbers that I'm very proud of. I did leave Skype in 2005 and exited when we sold to eBay. But there are a couple numbers that I think are pretty big that I'm quite proud of that I want to share with you. Skype connects today 13% of the world's international phone calls, which makes Skype the largest telecom operator in the world and the largest in the history of the world. Skype has 638 million users today, which is twice the population of the US. And I think I'll simply leave you with that to think about. But I thank you very much for your time, and thank you for using Skype.